Hello, I'm back in my reading corner for 2 more chapters of Potion Masters. We'll do chapters 5 and 6 today. The delicious aroma of chicken cacciatore wafted through the kitchen as Gordy's mother removed the casserole dish from the oven. It was Monday evening, and Mrs. Stitzer had returned home from her most recent trip early for once. The Stitzer family gathered around the dining room table, staring at a mason jar. Normally, Mrs. Stitzer decorated with flowers or fruit or scented candles, but not tonight. This mason jar had been sealed with a brass ring and contained a human tongue. Saliva moistened the glass as the tongue flicked and rolled, each time it performed a trick. One of the twins burst into laughter. "Make it whistle!" Isaac reached across the table for the jar. Gordy promptly slapped his hand away. "He can't make it whistle." "Why not?" Jessica asked. Gordy stared at his father, sitting at the head of the table with his lips pursed tightly together. "Because it has to be in his mouth to do that." Gordy's dad forced a smile. "In a hackly alien?" he asked, which made absolutely no sense at all to Gordy. The twins snickered, but Gordy felt bad for his dad. He looked so uncomfortable. "I'm so sorry, dear," Gordy's mom announced from the kitchen. "It'll be over soon. Just 5 more minutes, I promise. You're being such a good sport." His dad rolled his eyes. "Ood oort." Gordy's dad had agreed to allow Mrs. Stitzer to try out a new potion on him. It was supposed to render him completely silent, but as the Stitzers soon discovered, simply not having a tongue in one's mouth did not make one quiet. Wanda Stitzer carried in a piping hot casserole dish with her black oven mitts. A pleasant smell followed her into the room. "Careful, it's really hot." Instead of placing the dish on the hot pad at the center of the table, she lowered it in front of Gordy and wafted the steam toward his nostrils. "Decipher," she instructed. Gordy nodded and inhaled the aroma of tomatoes, poultry, and bow tie pasta. He caught hints of oregano and garlic, but also something foreign. "Is that bloodroot?" he asked. His mother beamed. "Yes, what else?" Gordy knew bloodroot could be used to make someone throw up, but why would his mom want that to happen at the dinner table? Isaac drummed his fingers on the table impatiently. "Can we eat now?" Mrs. Stitzer ignored Isaac and smiled at Gordy, showing all her teeth, hinting at the answer. Jessica's hand shot in the air. Ooh, I know. You put teeth in it." "Teeth?" Isaac whined. "Why do we have to eat teeth?" "It's not teeth, dear," Mrs. Stitzer said, though it wouldn't have been the first time a molar had snuck its way into a meal. Gordy snapped his fingers. "Seal bone powder." "Well done," she cheered, finally setting the dish on the table. "What's bone powder have to do with teeth?" Jessica asked. "A potion made of bloodroot and the bones from an Arctic seal makes you want to brush your teeth. Potion master dentist used it all the time 100 years ago," Gordy said, "and it still works." His mom ladled servings of the meal onto everyone's plates. "I'm very proud of you, Gordy. I've said this many times before, but I have never seen anyone with your natural talent at deciphering. It takes most elixirs years to master the skill, and yet you're so young and so good." Gordy ducked his head, embarrassed by the praise. Isaac and Jessica rolled their eyes at each other. The twins perhaps had a future in potion making, but for the time being they were far too impatient and stubborn to practice. Eyeing his meal eagerly without a tongue to assist in swallowing, Gordy's dad held up his hands in frustration. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Gordon." Mrs. Stitzer pulled a small spray bottle from her apron pocket and lightly spritzed her husband's mouth. The tongue disappeared from the jar with a flashing pop. Finally, Gordy's dad worked his tongue around in his mouth. "Remind me never to agree to that again." "Come now," Wanda said, reaching over and caressing her husband's cheek. "Where would I be without my hero? Now, what's on everyone's schedules this week?" She pulled out her smartphone. "I have a sales meeting on Thursday evening," Gordy's dad announced. Wanda clucked her tongue. "I'm leaving Thursday for a convention, and I have to be at the airport no later than 4 o'clock. Mrs. Stitzer slurped his drink. "That's a problem. My meeting with the Western Garbage Disposal Union starts at 4:30. "That's nowhere near the airport." She narrowed her eyes and quickly thumbed a message in her online calendar. "Fine, I'll have a taxi then." "Again?" No, I'll drop you off," Mr. Stitzer said, his mouth crowned with pasta and sauce. "I can be a little late. It's only garbage disposals." Mrs. Stitzer sighed and smiled. Thank you, dear. It will be nice to save a bit of money. Taxi fares are bleeding our savings dry. But I do want my Subaru back sometime this year. How long is this procedure? Mr. Stitzer made air quotes. Going to take? Just one more week and life will be back to normal, she insisted. So Thursday looks to be jam-packed, Gordy's dad said. With what with my meeting and your convention, and of course, that thing you're planning on taking Gordy to Thursday morning. Gordy had been absently absorbing the mundane conversation of weekly schedules while scarfing down his dinner, but his ears perked up at his dad's mention of his name. What thing? He asked, his eyes flitting between his parents. His dad winked at Gordy. His mom puckered her lips and scrunched her nose. Always trying to spoil the fun, aren't you, Buster? She said to her husband. Wanda exhaled and shifted her gaze to Gordy. I read in your curriculum that you could earn a significant amount of extra credit from spending some time at one of your parents' workplaces. Gordy swallowed a bite, trying not to get his hopes up. I've cleared it with your principal. You'll spend half a day on Thursday with me, but you'll have some makeup work to do on Friday, she said. So nothing but studying after school. You understand? Are you serious? Gordy scooted back from the table, the chair legs chirping as they scuffed against the wooden floor. You're taking me to BREW headquarters? His mom dabbed at the corners of her mouth with a napkin before resting her hands on the table and offering Gordy the slightest of nods. Gordy leaped from his chair, hooting and hollering in delight. His mom giggled. The twins watched from their seats, their faces contorted with confusion. Now hold up, Mr. Stitzer announced, raising a finger and cutting through Gordy's raucous celebration. Gordy could very well choose to accompany me to work, Wanda. We can't assume he's all that interested in visiting your mysterious headquarters. He needs to make his choice. Gordy stopped abruptly. Oh, yeah, he said, lowering into his chair. I mean, of course I want to see where you work, Dad. He couldn't imagine having to listen to his dad yammer on and on about appliances all day long, but he didn't want to hurt his dad's feelings. Stop, Mr. Stitzer swatted his hand, snickering. I'm only kidding. Your mother's work is way more interesting than mine. Wouldn't you want to miss out on that opportunity? Gordy smiled. Thanks, Dad. Why don't we get to go? Isaac asked. His lips were bright red from tomato sauce and no doubt speckled with traces of bloodroot. Yeah, Jessica chimed in. I want to have a day off from school. And you will, when you're old enough, Gordy's mom said. But this is Gordy's time, and I think he's finally earned a chance to see where the real magic takes place. Chapter 6. Gordy's mom navigated the van to the first of 2 security checkpoints and showed her badge to the uniformed man standing guard. The other guard gave Gordy a temporary pass which allowed him access to certain areas of the property. Gordy clipped the pass to his shirt and leaned forward to stare out through the windshield at the immense hexagonal-shaped building rising 4 stories above the expansive grounds. At the second checkpoint, Gordy saw a bright pink sign with the words, Somnium Fine Creams and Oils, stuck in the lawn in front of a neatly manicured hedgerow. Bottles and cartons of various Somnium products were sold all over the country at grocery stores and in gas stations, and Gordy had memorized several of the catchy jingles from the television commercials. Any normal passerby may have raised an eyebrow at the amount of security needed to protect a multi-level marketing corporation. But while Somnium's products were real and beneficial, Gordy knew that it was all just a cover for the truth. Behind the closed doors of that impregnable fortress was BREW headquarters. The Board of Ruling Elixirs Worldwide was the governing body of the potion community. The BREW Chamber of Directors determined what potions could be concocted and which ones were in violation of the laws. Every legal advancement in potion making in the last 30 years had come from within the walls of BREW headquarters. Goosebumps prickled on Gordy's arms. He was finally going to see where the magic happened. Gordy's mom parked the van and the 2 entered through the lobby doors. There was yet another security post. This time they had to empty their pockets and walk through an x-raying machine similar to the ones Gordy had seen at airports. Wanda carried all sorts of vials and ampules in her purse, but they slid through the machine just fine. A crystal chandelier dangles from the center of the ceiling directly above a desk where a receptionist issued Gordy a visitor's badge. He attached it next to a security clearance badge. "Surprised to see you here today, Wanda," a man said, approaching from behind Gordy. "Bolter?" Gordy's mom replied in surprise. I could say the same thing about you. Don't you have business up north?" "Indeed I do, but when the chamber beckons, I must report. I'm showcasing my newest invention." Bolter had dark skin and long black hair that draped down below his shoulders. He was incredibly tall and thin, towering above Gordy and his mom like an odd lamppost, only one with a pair of charcoal-colored goggles strapped to his forehead. He was also wearing jeans, which made his legs look ridiculously long. His eyes seemed to sparkle when he smiled, but when he leaned forward to speak to Wanda, cupping his hands over his mouth, Gordy noticed Bolter was missing his fingers. With the exception of his thumbs, only gnarled stubs remained. Bolter whispered something secretive to Wanda, and she reared back in surprise. "You're kidding me, and they approved?" she asked, sounding impressed. "Yes, indeedy. I just need to provide documentation." Bolter turned to face Gordy. "Who do we have here? An intern, perhaps? One of BREW's youngest and finest?" His nose twitched, but then he placed a hand on Wanda's shoulder. "No, don't tell me. Is this the Gordy Stitzer?" Gordy's mom nodded. "I had to bring him here to introduce you two eventually, didn't I?" "I was beginning to think it would never happen." Bolter closed his eyes and bowed to Gordy. "Your mother tells me you have quite the gift. May I test your abilities?" The peculiar man reached into his front pocket and pulled out a small jar containing a white substance. Unscrewing the lid, an impressive skill, considering his lack of digits, Bolter mystically wafted his hand over the opening of the jar. Yes, go on. What do you sense?" he coaxed. Gordy leaned forward and sucked in a deep breath, but it took only a second to decipher. "It's mayonnaise," he said, slightly confused. Bolter's mouth fell open in a gasp. "So gifted!" The corners of Gordy's lips lifted into a smirk as he glanced at his mom. "Gifted? That's a jar of mayonnaise." "Delicious. Would you like some?" Bolter offered the jar. Gordy politely declined. Bolter clapped his nubs together. "So, are we touring the vicinity this morning?" "Would you like to tag along?" Wanda asked, winking at Gordy. Bolter glanced down at his watch, pursing his lips together. "I have a few hours I can thread together to show this young dram the ropes. Bolter had endless stamina, his tone lively and his mannerisms animated as he spouted off information like a machine gun. He walked with a pronounced skip in his step, his thin legs swishing across the marbled floor, and he insisted on taking the stairs as well, sometimes 3 or 4 steps at a time. Gordy and his mom labored to keep up. Each of the floors of BREW headquarters served a different purpose. Bolter called them the four M's: management, military, machinery, and medical. "We won't spend a lot of time on the first level," Bolter said. "Management, administrative and legal operations, all sorts of boring and blahs." He winked at Gordy. "Though your mom would like to have a corner office on this floor one day." "I would," she agreed. "That would mean less travel, more family time." Bolter made a disgusted face. "Such a waste of talent, if you ask me." He bent over to address Gordy at close range. "Wanda had no doubt neglected to share with you this nugget of knowledge, but she is one of the greatest elixirists in the world." Gordy's mom burst out with laughter. "I don't like to lie to my children, but it's true," Bolter said, waggling his eyebrows. "She brews with vibrancy and revolutionary skill. Don't let her fool you, young Stitzer. Wanda is one of the elite." Gordy smiled and looked at his mom, who promptly shook her head in denial. It was nice to hear what other people thought of her abilities. She kept things close to the chest. He always wondered why she insisted on being so secretive. Floor 2. Bolter waved a magnetic badge over a sensor military. A door opened, revealing more security guards studying the Stitzers as they entered. A hallway of doors stretched out in front of Gordy. Various placards displaying names and specifications were adhered to the lintels. Gordy read a few of the signs as he passed. Charles Capsick, weapon enchantments. Isaiah Govine, ballistics. Zelda Morfata, explosives. Gordy smirked. "I didn't know there were so many elixirists involved in the military. What does potion making have to do with war?" Bolter sighed. "It has everything to do with it, unfortunately." Weapons are one of the areas where we elixirists naturally excel. Shame. So much damage can be done by only one tiny vial. Ask Einstein. He knew all too well about the dangers of revealing one's talent. Einstein was an elixirist? Gordy asked. Bolter gawked at Gordy's mom in shock. What have you not told this boy? Wanda smiled and then nodded at one of the doors. Is Zelda in the office today? Bolter clicked his tongue. I thought she would be, but the lights are out. He jiggled the doorknob. Door's locked. Perhaps she took a sick day. Can we see inside any of these offices? Gordy asked. He wondered what sort of workstations militarized elixirists used. Did they have special cauldrons and ingredients? You know, I'd rather not linger too long on this floor, Gordy's mom said. A lot of these folks aren't as pleasant to converse with as Bolter is. Has to do with their line of work, I suppose. They climbed the next flight of stairs, huffing and puffing and clinging to the handrail, though Bolter never showed any signs of being winded. Machinery, Bolter cheered, bursting through the door with his arms outstretched. Welcome to my humble abode. There weren't any security guards roaming the hallway on this level. In fact, the whole floor felt empty, as if the three of them were the only living beings around. Gordy scrunched his nose, but before he could ask why any elixirist would need to meddle with machinery, Bolter drew their attention to the open door near the center of the hallway. His name appeared on the placard above the door, though it could have been scribbled on with a permanent marker. Bolter's face looked like an automotive junkyard. Bumpers, mufflers, and carburetors dangled from chains throughout the room. A mountain of rolled-up blueprints had been piled in one corner. Gordy spotted stevia, Vietnamese coriander, and an enormous cluster of broccoli stalks hanging from an herb drying rack. Bunsen burners and a rusted steel cauldron were in the other corner. The floor was slick with oil, and the room smelled like diesel. This is where I find my inner peace, Bolter said, beaming. What do you think, Gordy? Impressive? Yeah, Gordy lied. How could Bolter work in such a disheveled lab? So what is it you do exactly? Bolter blinked and grinned. Isn't it obvious? Maybe it should have been obvious, but the office needed a serious overhaul, and the whole room made Gordy itch uncomfortably. Now he understood why his mom insisted on keeping their lab so orderly. It just made practical sense. How could anyone mix and brew in an environment so filled with chaos? Bolter works in automated concoctions, Gordy's mom explained. It's his primary responsibility at BREW. Then it all became clear. The car parts, the oil, the hanging light fixture made entirely of headlights. That's cool, Gordy said. But what do you do with the cars? Make them go faster? Not exactly, Bolter said. Volatile chemicals have a negative impact on emissions. On this floor, we try to cut down on pollution. Better for the environment. You understand? I guess, but how? Gordy nudged a tray of lug nuts, scattering them across the floor. Bolter never noticed. His unblinking eyes focused on Gordy's. Have you not heard of hybrid vehicles? Bolter asked. You made those? Gordy curled his lips, impressed. Bolter started to nod, but then opted to shake his head instead. Not exactly, but I know several members on the team that were involved in the hybrid program, and I may have given them a gentle nudge here and there in the right direction. I'm going to show a picture. This is Bolter, I assume. Gordy's eyes widened. Wait a minute, he pointed at Bolter. Are you the one working on our Subaru? Bolter's grin faltered. Oh, yes, that's me. No wonder their car's been out of commission for so long. If someone like Bolter had been meddling with it. Should be ready to go soon, Bolter insisted. Just a few more days for the mixture to percolate in the gas tank. Yeah, right, Gordy thought. And then what would happen? Would the Subaru implode? A blaring car horn honked in the room, and Gordy covered his ears. The sound came from underneath a pile of hubcaps that Gordy realized was actually Bolter's desk. Your phone's ringing, Wanda said calmly. Bolter glanced down at the phone, his eyebrows rising. Ah, Zelda! She's come to work after all. Yes, I probably should take that, he said. Would you like to unbury a seed or two and wait? I could show you some of my latest projects. Wanda smiled at Gordy, and he silently pleaded with her to escape immediately. I'm sure Gordy would love to hear all about them, but I have to get him back to school before lunch, she said, and we still have a few more stops to make on this tour. Gordy sighed with relief. Bolter was nice enough, but if given the choice, he would have rather listened to his dad talk about chest freezers for several hours than spend another minute in Bolter's disastrous office. The horn honked again, and Gordy jumped. Bolter adroitly plucked the phone receiver from his desk with one fingerless hand and bowed his goodbyes to Gordy and his mom. End of chapter 6.